My parents secretly signed away our metal shop to my brother. I quit 80-hour weeks, took them to court, and opened my own shop that stole their key client. I'm Owen, 32, male. 10 years of my life disappeared into that shop in Green Bay, Wisconsin, the industrial zone near the bay where everything smells like cutting fluid and burnt metal. That's where I spent my 20s working myself into the ground for a business I thought would eventually be mine. I started right after finishing trade school. My grandfather founded the place in 1978 with one CNC machine and a dream. By the time I came aboard, we had 6 CNC mills, 3 lathes, a full welding setup, and contracts with half the manufacturing plants in northeastern Wisconsin. I worked 80-hour weeks. Not an exaggeration. I'd show up at 5 in the morning to prep machines, load programs, and get the first run going. I spent my days operating CNCs, TIG welding custom brackets, programming toolpaths, dealing with suppliers, and managing clients who needed impossible tolerances on parts they had designed wrong. I'd leave around 9 or 10 at night, sometimes later if we had a rush order. My hands were permanently stained with cutting oil. I had scars from metal shavings and burns from welding spatter. My back was shot from lifting steel plates, and my hearing was half gone from machine noise. My social life was non-existent. Friends stopped inviting me out after the 50th time I said I couldn't make it. Dating was a joke. You can't exactly maintain a relationship when you're married to a milling machine. But I kept going because I thought I was building my future. My parents said all the right things. This is our family legacy. You're investing in yourself. One day this will all pay off for you. I ate it up like an idiot. Here's the thing. There's always a favorite kid. And brother, I wasn't it. My brother Mason is 3 years younger than me, 29 now. He'd roll in around 10:30, grab coffee from the fancy machine my parents bought for the office, spend an hour scrolling through his phone, maybe answer an email or two, then disappear for a 2-hour lunch. He'd come back around 3, hang out in the climate-controlled office, then bounce by 4:30. His contribution? Attending the occasional client meeting where I'd already done all the technical work, taking credit for projects I designed and fabricated, posting on the company's Instagram with captions like another successful build by our team while standing next to parts I'd made. And get this, my parents paid him a salary, $45,000 a year, for part-time Instagram modeling. Meanwhile, I got room and board at my parents' house. No cash, no health insurance, no 401k, just a bedroom and whatever leftovers were in the fridge. Mason drove a newish truck my parents bought him because he needed reliable transportation for client meetings. I drove a 20-year-old beater that burned oil and had the check engine light on since 2008. But I didn't complain. I kept my head down and worked. I figured actions spoke louder than words. I thought if I just kept proving myself, eventually my parents would see my value. Nope. Turns out I was building someone else's kingdom. Last month, everything changed. I was in the office around midnight finishing paperwork for a big medical device contract. We'd just delivered 200 custom titanium components with tolerances tighter than anything we'd done before. I was filing the quality control documents when I noticed an envelope tucked behind some old binders. It had a red confidential stamp across the front. I handled most of the shop's administrative stuff. Seeing something marked confidential that I'd never seen before set off alarm bells. I opened it. Inside was a succession plan dated 4 months earlier. Legal documents, transfer of ownership papers. My parents were transferring 100% ownership of the business to Mason. My name didn't appear anywhere except on the employee roster. Yeah, employee roster. 10 years of my life, 80-hour weeks, thousands of parts fabricated, millions in contracts I'd landed. And according to these papers, I was nothing. Just labor. I stood there, reading it over and over. The shop was quiet except for the hum of the dehumidifier. The anger came first. That burning feeling in your chest when you realize you've been played. Then came the sadness when you understand your own parents looked at everything you did and decided it wasn't worth anything. I thought about all those mornings I dragged myself out of bed at 4:30, all the weekends I spent in the shop, while everyone else was at Lambeau Field, the friends who stopped calling, the relationships that never happened, the life I'd given up, the sacrifices. And they decided Mason deserved it. Mason, who couldn't program a CNC to save his life, who didn't know the difference between 6061 and 7075 aluminum. The guy who'd probably never spent more than 30 hours in the shop in any given week. I took the documents home, didn't sleep, just sat in my room staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. Around 3 in the morning I made a decision. I was done. The next morning I got up at my usual time, drove to the shop like always. But instead of starting the machines, I sat down in the office and wrote my resignation on company letterhead. I quit. Good luck running this place without me. You're going to need it. I left the letter on my dad's desk, grabbed my personal tools, my grandfather's old welding helmet he'd given me when I started, and a photo of him and me from my first week. Then I walked out and drove away while the sun was coming up over the bay. For the first time in 10 years, I didn't have to be anywhere at 5 in the morning. Didn't have to answer to anyone. It felt terrifying and liberating at the same time. I crashed at my buddy Adam's place. He had a couch and didn't ask too many questions. I spent my time trying to figure out what to do next. At 32, with no real savings and a decade of unpaid labor, my options felt limited. Then, exactly 8 days after I quit, my phone rang. My dad. His voice strained, almost panicked. "Owen, are you serious? Where have you gone? We need you back right now. The Precision Dynamics account. They're threatening to pull out. They're saying quality's dropped and nobody's responding to their technical questions. We can't afford to lose them." Precision Dynamics, our biggest client, a medical device manufacturer. They accounted for about 40% of our revenue. High-tolerance work, complex parts, demanding specs. I'd built that relationship over 4 years. I let the silence sit for a moment. A week ago, I would have rushed back to fix everything. But not anymore. "Let Mason handle it," I said calmly. "He's the owner now, right? I'm sure he'll figure it out." I hung up before he could respond. My heart was pounding, but I didn't feel guilty. Hanging up on my dad wasn't the end of it. It was just the beginning. My phone blew up after that call. My mom, my dad again, text messages from Mason that started with "What's your problem?" and escalated to "You're going to regret this." I ignored all of them. Adam walked into the living room. "Everything good, man?" "Yeah, just my family realizing they can't run their business without me. About time you walked away from that situation," he said. "I've been watching you kill yourself for that shop for years." "For what?" "Nothing." Adam was a union electrician, made good money, had benefits, worked his 40 hours, and went home. He'd been telling me for years I was getting screwed. 3 days later, I was getting food at a little diner on the east side when I saw my parents walk in. My mom spotted me first. Her face went through about 5 different emotions: surprise, anger, something that might have been guilt, then just cold. They walked over to my booth. My dad stayed standing, trying to loom over me like that would intimidate me back into line. "We need to talk," he said. "Not really," I replied, focusing on my eggs. "You're being childish, Owen. The business needs you. Your family needs you." Funny. The succession plan didn't mention anything about me being needed. It just said Mason gets everything. My mom jumped in. "You weren't supposed to see that yet. We were going to discuss it with you properly. But when? After another 5 years of free labor while I lived in your house rent-free?" My dad said, "We fed you. That's not nothing." I worked 80 hours a week for 10 years. I brought in Precision Dynamics. I landed the contracts with Badger Manufacturing and Superior Components. I designed the custom jigs that increased our efficiency by 30%. I trained every new employee. And you think room and board covers that? Other people in the diner were starting to look over. My dad's face was turning red. "Mason is your brother," my mom said. "He needs the stability more than you. You're capable. You can make it on your own. He needs structure." "Yeah, that's the problem," I interrupted. "You handed him everything, including 10 years of my work." My dad leaned in closer. "If you don't come back, the business will fail. Is that what you want? To destroy your grandfather, legacy, out of spite?" That one almost got to me. But then I thought about Mason posting Instagram stories from Lambeau Field while I worked overtime, about him driving that new truck while I scraped together gas money. "No," I said. "You did that when you decided I wasn't worth including in the future of a business I built. Now, if you'll excuse me, my eggs are getting cold." They stood there for another few seconds. My mom looked like she wanted to say something else, but my dad grabbed her arm and pulled her away. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about my grandfather. He'd built that shop from nothing. Used to tell me stories about the early days, how he saved up to buy that first CNC machine, how he built relationships with clients based on quality and trust. He'd had a journal. I remembered seeing it years ago when I was helping organize the attic. I'd never really looked at it closely, but now I was curious. I drove back to my parents' house at 2 in the morning, parked down the street, snuck into the detached garage where they stored old stuff, found the boxes from the attic. It took me an hour, but I found the journal, leather cover, pages yellowed with age, my grandfather's handwriting. I sat in my truck with a flashlight reading page after page. He documented everything, the struggles of starting out, his philosophy on business, his thoughts on family and legacy. Then I found something that made me stop breathing. Tucked between 2 pages was a handwritten agreement dated 1991. The language was clear. This business belongs to those who build it. Anyone who gives their sweat and skill to keep this shop running deserves to share in its success. No one should claim another man's work as their own. My grandfather had wanted equity, fairness. He'd wanted the business to go to whoever actually did the work, not just whoever happened to be the favorite. I took photos of every page with my phone. This changed everything. The next morning, I called a lawyer. The lawyer's name was Eric. Young guy, maybe 35, ran a small practice in Howard. Adam's cousin had used him for a contract dispute and said he was good. I walked into his office carrying my grandfather's journal and a folder of documents I'd printed out. He went through everything methodically. After about 90 minutes, he looked up at me. "This agreement from your grandfather," he said, tapping the journal. "It's not a formal legal document, but it establishes clear founder intent. Combined with your documented contributions, we might have a case. We needed to prove 3 things. 1, that I was the primary driver of the business's success. 2, that the current succession plan violated my grandfather's documented wishes. 3, that my brother was unfit to run the company. The 3rd part won't be hard," I said. Eric smiled. "We need evidence, though. Everything you can get. Customer testimonials, financial records, proof that the business depended on you specifically." I spent the next week gathering evidence like my life depended on it. Old emails I'd saved, messages from clients praising my work specifically. "Owen, your attention to detail on these parts is why we keep coming back. You understand our specs better than anyone. We tried 3 other shops before finding you guys. Owen's technical knowledge solved problems our own engineers couldn't figure out. I made spreadsheets showing the business's growth over my 10 years versus the previous decade. Revenue nearly tripled. Client retention went from 60% to 92%. We'd expanded into medical device manufacturing, aerospace components, and precision automotive parts, all sectors I'd broken into. Then I dug into the financial records I still had access to on an old thumb drive. Mason had been using the company card like his personal ATM, charges at Kohl's, Best Buy, restaurants nowhere near our clients, season tickets to Packers games marked as client entertainment even though we had email records showing those clients didn't attend, a 5-day trip to Door County charged as a business conference during a week when no industry conferences were happening. My favorite, a $4,000 home theater system delivered to his apartment listed as office equipment. I organized everything, made copies, took it all to Eric. He whistled when he saw the financial evidence. "This is significant, Owen. This is about fiduciary responsibility. If we can prove your brother misused company funds, it strengthens our argument that he's unfit to own the business." Over the next few weeks, I kept building the case. Eric wanted more proof that my departure was impacting the business. I called former coworkers. Caroline, who ran quality control and had worked with me for 7 years, said, "Honest to God, it's chaos without you. Mason's trying to run jobs he doesn't understand. Last week he programmed a mill wrong and wrecked a $50,000 titanium workpiece. Your dad lost his mind. We're 3 weeks behind on the precision dynamics order, and they're threatening to leave." I got similar written statements from 2 other employees. Then I got a call from Frank Palmer, my grandfather's best friend and the shop's first employee, retired 5 years ago but still living in Green Bay. "Oh, and I heard what's happening with your folks in the business. Your grandfather would be ashamed of them. He specifically told me he wanted that shop to go to whoever put in the work. That was his whole philosophy. I actually found that written in his journal. Good. That journal has weight. Listen, I have something that might help you." Frank handed me a box of photographs from the shop's early days and throughout the years, dozens from my time there, almost all showing me working while my grandfather watched proudly in the background. "He knew you were the one," Frank said. Told me multiple times, "Frank, Owen's got it. He's got the work ethic, the skill, the dedication." Frank also had an old file folder of contracts showing my grandfather had been moving toward a more equitable ownership structure before he died. Eric nearly jumped out of his chair when I showed him the new evidence. "This is exactly what we needed. We're not just arguing about inheritance anymore, we're arguing about honoring a founder's documented wishes." He laid out the plan. File a lawsuit to invalidate the succession plan, argue I was the rightful heir based on my contributions, and use Mason's financial mismanagement as evidence he shouldn't be in charge. "This is going to get ugly," Eric warned. Your family will fight back. They'll try to paint you as greedy or vindictive. Are you ready for that? I thought about it for 2 seconds. 10 years of my life, 80-hour weeks, no pay, no recognition. Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it. He filed the lawsuit 2 days later. My parents got served 3 days after that, then Mason. My phone blew up again, texts from my mom, voicemails from my dad, Mason calling me every name in the book. I blocked his number and kept moving forward. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 weeks out. Those 3 weeks felt like 3 years. The shop was falling apart without me. Caroline texted updates. Mason tried to run the new aerospace job today, messed up the tool offsets and scrapped 3 parts. Customers furious. Your dad hired some guy to replace you. He quit after 2 days, said Mason was impossible to work with. Precision Dynamics officially pulled their account, going with Milwaukee Precision Manufacturing instead. Each message was vindicating but also painful. That shop was my grandfather's legacy. Watching them destroy it hurt more than I expected. 2 days before the hearing, I ran into Mason at a gas station. His face twisted into something ugly. "This is all your fault," he said loud enough for other customers to hear. "How do you figure? The business is falling apart because you're too much of a baby to handle not being the favorite son." I laughed. "Couldn't help it. Mason, you couldn't program a CNC if your life depended on it. The business is falling apart because you're incompetent, not because I left. You're going to lose this lawsuit. Then you'll come crawling back, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows what a loser you are." Good talk, Mason. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep at all. The courthouse in Green Bay is an old building downtown. I got there an hour early, sat in my truck watching the bay through the buildings. Eric showed up. We went over everything one last time. My parents and Mason arrived with some hotshot lawyer from Milwaukee. We all filed into the courtroom. The judge was an older woman with short gray hair and reading glasses, Judge Denise Porter. She looked stern but fair. Eric presented everything. My grandfather's journal, Frank's testimony, the photos, client testimonials, employee statements, the statistical breakdown, and Mason's $75,000 in personal expenses over 3 years, every receipt blown up on the screen. Then came testimony. I took the stand first and told the truth. I believed I was building something, thought my work mattered. When I found the succession plan, it felt like my entire adult life had been a lie. Their lawyer tried to paint me as bitter. I stayed calm. Frank testified about working with my grandfather for 30 years and how he always said I was the future of the shop. Mason took the stand. Their lawyer fed him softball questions about modernizing an online presence. Eric's cross-examination was brutal. Can you name 3 clients you've personally brought in? Can you describe the setup process for a CNC mill? What was last quarter's revenue? Mason had no answers. He got defensive, made excuses, claimed he delegated technical details. Eric pointed out that high-level strategy had resulted in losing 40% of the company's revenue within 3 weeks of the primary operator leaving. The judge called a recess. Eric pulled me aside. "Your brother's testimony helped us more than it hurt us." When we reconvened, Judge Porter said she'd issue a ruling in 3 days. Those 3 days were the longest of my life. The shop continued its freefall. Another employee quit. Badger Manufacturing was threatening to leave. My dad hadn't been in for days. Friday morning, Eric called, "Be at the courthouse by 9. Judge Porter is ready." Adam came for moral support. Frank showed up too and gave me a firm handshake. "Your grandfather would be proud, Owen. No matter what happens." We filed in. Judge Porter came in carrying a stack of papers. "I've reviewed all evidence and testimonies. This involves complex questions of family business succession, founder intent, and fiduciary responsibility. The plaintiff's grandfather clearly documented his philosophy. While the journal entry is not a formal legal document, it establishes clear founder intent, supported by testimony and a documented progression toward equitable ownership. The evidence of the plaintiff's contributions is overwhelming. 93% of production over the past decade, client testimonials, employee statements, immediate operational collapse after his departure. Regarding the defendant's fitness to run the business, I find the evidence deeply concerning. Therefore, I am ruling in favor of the plaintiff. The succession plan transferring 100% ownership to the defendant is invalidated as contrary to documented founder intent and inequitable given the plaintiff's contributions. However, given the current state of the business, significant debt, operational deterioration, and loss of major clients, I am ordering the business to be sold. Proceeds will be divided equally between both children after debts and the defendant's improper expenses are settled. The gavel came down. I'd won. We filed out in silence. My parents left quickly. Mason shot me one last hateful look and stormed off. Eric shook my hand. That's about as clear a victory as you could hope for. The business sold 6 weeks later to a manufacturing company from Milwaukee, mostly for the client list and equipment. After Mason reimbursed his expenses and debts were covered, my share came to $63,000. Not a fortune, but enough to start over. I found a 12,200 square foot space in Ashwaubenon, signed a lease, bought used equipment, and named the shop Palmer Precision after my grandfather. The first few weeks were just setup. Then I started making parts, small stuff at first, posted on social media, let people know I was open. Word spread fast. 3 weeks in, I got a call from Wayne at Precision Dynamics. We're not happy with Milwaukee Precision. Interested in doing work for us again? That order became my first major contract. I delivered 2 days early, every dimension perfect. Wayne called the next day. Let's talk about bringing you back as our primary vendor. I hired Caroline 2 months after opening. Having her handle quality control freed me up to take on more complex jobs. The business grew steadily. I saw my parents once after the verdict, ran into them at Festival Foods. We passed in the aisle. My mom looked away. My dad nodded slightly but didn't speak. I nodded back and kept walking. There wasn't anything to say. Mason moved to Milwaukee. Last I heard, he was working retail. 18 months after I left the family business, Palmer Precision was doing well. Steady income, growing client base, good reputation. I worked hard, but I took days off, saw friends, had an actual life. I started dating Nicole, the woman who came in needing custom stainless equipment for her coffee roastery. We've been together ever since. 3 years ago, I was working 80-hour weeks for nothing. Living in my parents' house, no money, no life, no future that was actually mine. Now I own a thriving shop, have a woman I love, and a life worth living. The lawsuit didn't just get me money, it got me freedom. One Tuesday, the owner of the company that had bought the old shop called. They were shutting the facility down but wanted to offer me first pick of the equipment before auction. Among the machines was my grandfather's original CNC mill from the 1980s, the one I learned on. I bought it, restored it, and set it up in the corner of Palmer Precision. It's too slow for production, but it runs perfectly, and every time I look at it, I feel him there with me, nodding approval. This shop isn't his factory, it's smaller, newer, but it's mine. Built by my hands. Nobody can take that from me. Sometimes when the shop is quiet at night and the last machine is spun down, I just stand there under the LED lights and feel everything hit me at once. Relief, first, like the weight I carried for 10 years finally slid off my shoulders and shattered on the concrete floor. Then pride, the kind that makes your chest tight because you look around and realize every single thing in here exists because you refuse to stay broken. But there's grief too, sharp and unexpected. I still catch myself missing the smell of that old shop, the exact pitch of the exhaust fan, the way my grandfather's voice used to echo off the walls when he told me I was doing it right. I won. I got justice. And I still lost a family. Some nights that trade feels fair, some nights it feels like the most expensive victory anyone ever paid for. I'm angry less often now, but when it comes, it's clean. No longer the wild, helpless rage of the 25-year-old who realized he'd been lied to every single day. It's a colder anger, the kind that reminds me never again will I trade my life for promises. Never again will I let love make me stupid. Mostly, though, I feel grateful in a way I don't have words for. Grateful for the scars on my hands that prove I can build anything I decide to build. Grateful for the silence at 5 a.m. that used to feel like a prison sentence and now feels like freedom. Grateful for Nicole's laugh drifting in from the office when she drops off coffee. For Caroline yelling, "Owen, you're hogging the mill again!" For Corey asking 1,000 questions exactly the way I once did. 3 years ago, I thought I had nothing. Turns out I had everything I needed inside me the whole time. I just had to walk through fire to figure that out. My grandfather used to say, a man isn't what he's given. A man is what he makes when nobody gives him a damn thing. I get it now. I'm okay. More than okay. I'm finally, truly free.